Welcome everyone to the virtual classes of ICAI. Today our topic of discussion is overheads and ABC costing. First, let's discuss some basic concepts on overheads. What are overheads? Overheads are those costs which are not directly traceable, costs which are not directly traceable to any cost object. For example, when you are manufacturing, let's say, a product, you use some raw material to manufacture that, and there are workers who are working on this. This becomes your direct material and direct wages, which you can exactly trace to that product which is being manufactured. However, there is some other expenses like electricity cost, the rent of the building, the supervision costs. Maybe you need a crane or some other thing to carry on the heavy material in the factory floor. So crane expenses, haulage expenses. These are certain expenses which may not be directly traceable to that particular product which you are manufacturing. And if you're manufacturing two or three products in the same department or the same factory, these costs must be shared by those different products which are being manufactured. So these are the costs which are not directly traceable. How do we classify overheads? One of the ways to classify is basis the element of cost. So you can have indirect material cost, for example, fuel. You can have indirect material or labor cost, after material labor cost. For example, the foreman, the supervisor. And you can also have indirect expenses like fuel, etc. So these are one of the ways in which you can classify the overheads. Another way of classifying the overheads is whether they are fixed, semi-variable, or variable. So basis the nature of the overheads, they can be classified as fixed, semi-variable, or variable. Fixed means they will remain constant. The total amount will be same. Semi-variable means some part of it is variable and some part fixed. So if a semi-variable expense is given, you must be able to bifurcate it into the variable part and the fixed part. Some part of it is variable and some part fixed. And a variable expense will totally depend upon per unit. It will vary as per the production. Another way of classifying is whether the overheads are controllable or non-controllable. So let's discuss how we treat the overheads. Number one, we may allocate the overheads. So one of the ways of treating the overheads is to allocate these overheads to the different departments or different products. Another way of allocating, sharing the overheads is apportioning the overheads. So you can either do allocation, you can apportion, or you can absorb the overheads. So these are the three methods in which we deal with the overheads. Allocation means you will be knowing exactly what has happened, where should the cost of the overheads be charged to. So for example, I'll take an example here. Let's say that there are three friends who visit a restaurant. So when three friends visit the restaurant, what happens is one orders a burger, the second orders a pizza, and the third orders a cold drink. And they consume their each product which they have ordered. So if the total cost of the entire thing is, let's say, 600, what do they do? The first friend will pay for the burger, let's say 90. The second friend will pay for the pizza, let's say 410. And the third friend will pay for the cold drink, let's say 100. So if you are exactly knowing what you have ordered and what you have consumed, this is how you share the bill, that is 90, 410, and 100. Whatever you've consumed, you're paying for that. That is allocation. This will kind of exactly trace the overhead cost to the product. If it had been apportionment, and if you had shared the pizza bites and the cold drink and shared the bites of the burger, in that case, maybe you will share the bill amongst each of you as through 200 per friend. So this is apportionment. So what we have divided, what we have done here is divided 600 amongst the three friends in a reasonable basis. And as they have consumed all the three things together, let's apportion it 200 per friend. Now, what is absorption? So absorption could be like a buffet place where restaurant where you pay, let's say 300 per person, and then you consume whatever you want. So if it is a buffet, you've paid 300 per person. Now, if someone who has taken a cold drink, he has consumed less, but is still paying a 300. So what has happened? It has been over-absorbed. Cold drink, the consumption was only of 100, but the payment was made of, absorbed rate was 300. Whereas for pizza, the payment was 300, but the consumption was 410. So pizza becomes a case of under absorption. And cold drink becomes a case of over absorption. I hope you understand this. The consumption was only 100, but overhead that is absorbed is 300. So it's a case of over absorption. When the actual is less than the absorbed figure, then it is a case of over absorption. And when the actual cost is more than absorbed, the overheads become under absorbed. So when there is allocation, it is exactly traceable per person. When there is apportionment, even then the total bill is exactly absorbed and there is no over and under allocation or apportionment. Exactly 600 is the bill and exactly 600 would be paid. In case of absorption, however, there can be sometimes over or under absorption. So what allocation means you will exactly know. For example, the rent, total rent is, let's say 10,000. And there are four departments. They have their own separate buildings and they pay their own separate rents. Let's say A pays 2,000, B pays 6,000, and C pays 2,000. So we have allocated the rent. It is exactly traceable. Had it not been traceable and rent would have been 10,000, we don't know how much is exactly consumed by the space is consumed by each. So what we will do is we will apportion this in some reasonable basis. So when you apportion, you have to take some basis. Try to trace a reasonable basis for the rent. The basis could be the floor area occupied by all the three departments. So if the floor area for the three departments is mentioned, for example, A has 1,000 square feet, B has 6,000 square feet, and C has 3,000 square feet, then we should have apportioned the rent in the ratio of 1,000 is to 6,000 is to 3,000. So this is how you apportion the various expenses. You find the reasonable basis, and on that basis, you can apportion the rent or any other expense. So any expense will have some reasonable basis on which you will be apportioning it. Rent has floor area. If there are light or electricity, then there could be light points. If there is power, you may have a reasonable basis as the horsepower of the machines. If the overhead is, let's say, depreciation, the reasonable basis can be the value of assets or value of machines. If the expense is supervision, the reasonable basis could be number of workers being supervised in each department. If it is canteen expenses, again, it can depend upon number of workers or how many meals were consumed in each department. So you have to find a reasonable basis for the expense and find out how many units of that basis is used by the different departments, and you can apportion that overhead expenses into those departments on that basis. So this is the concept of apportionment. Let us see how we can apportion. So there are three bases. One, methods of apportionment. When there is a secondary apportion, secondary distribution. So when you have a secondary distribution, you can say, what is secondary distribution? So when I had taken these assets, depreciation, and divided it into various departments on the basis of the value of assets, this or the rent amongst various departments, this may be called as the primary distribution. After you have done the primary distribution, there can be a need to do a secondary distribution. What do we mean by that? Let us say there are 5 departments in an organization. Department A, B, C, D, and E. Department A, B, C are your production department. And Department D and E are your service department. What do service departments do? They are maintained in an organization to provide services to the production department. For example, the service department could be the human resource department. What will it do? It will select the workers for all the other departments. Recruit the workers and select them. What could be the service department? It could be the maintenance department. What will maintenance department do? It does not produce anything. It will repair the machines which have broken down in the production department, ABC. Let's say the service department is a store department. What does stores do? It will hold material, raw material, store it with it, and will issue these raw material to the production department. Similarly, a service department could be canteen department. A canteen would do what? It would provide meals to all the employees of the different departments A, B, C, D, and E. So this is how there are various service departments. So once we have, let's say, allocated or apportioned the rent, let's say 10,000. Now this 10,000 is apportioned amongst A, B, C, and D and E also. Similarly, electricity is consumed for 6,000. It is allocated as 1,000, 2,000. So far what we have done is we have done a primary distribution. Okay. This is the case of primary distribution. Now what happens is Department D also has an expense of 750 and Department E has an expense of 1750. But Department D and E are not manufacturing anything on their own, which they can recover their cost from. So ultimately, the cost is to be recovered from those departments which are producing something. So this 750 and 1750 must again be charged to Department ABC. Now, how do we charge this? When you charge this 750 and 1750 amongst ABC, that portion is called as secondary distribution. This is known as secondary distribution. So this 750 must be again charged to departments ABC and 1750 should again be charged to department A, B, and C. This is called as secondary distribution. There are different methods in which you can do the secondary distribution. The first method is the direct method. The second method is the repeated distribution. And the third method is reciprocal distribution. When you have the direct method, what will happen is the production department is to bear the cost of departments D and E. So what will be mentioned that Department D will give its expenses to, let's say, A, B, C in the ratio of 30%, 30%, and 40%. So here what has been mentioned here is that Department D has given its services to ABC 30, 30, 40. Similarly, Department E has also given its services to ABC only 50%, 30%, and 20%. So whatever the expenses of Department D is there, 750, you will divide the 750 to ABC only. 30% means 225 will go to A, 225 will go to B, and 300 would go to, remaining would go to C. Similarly, the 1750 will also be half of it, 50%, that is 875 will go to Department A. The remaining 30% and 20% will go to B and C. So in this case, what has happened? The service department has given its services to only the production department. For example, service department is maintenance department. So it is only repairing the machines of ABC. There are no machines in Department D. So Department D has given its services only to ABC. Similarly, the Department E is a stores department. What does it do? It holds the raw material consumed by ABC. So E has also given the services to Department ABC only. However, if there can be a possibility that Department D is a maintenance department, which is giving services to ABC, but Department E is canteen. So it is asking all the employees to come and consume meals in this department. So when Department E is the canteen department, not just the employees of ABC will consume meal in Department E, but the Department D employees will also take meals here only, which means Department E has given its services not just to ABC, but to ABC and D. Here we can use a step method for reciprocal distribution. And the third way could be that Department D is giving services to, let's say Department D is HR department. So not maintenance, but HR. So HR will have the employees of A, B, C, and E being recruited, and E is the canteen department. So E will have A, B, C, D, and E as well, all the employees eating here only, which means D is offering its services to E and E is offering its services to D also. That becomes reciprocal distribution. So when there is reciprocal distribution, we can solve it using either the equation method, which is called simultaneous equation method, or we can use trial and error method, or the repeated distribution method of there. Yeah. So this is how you will charge the expenses of the service department to the production departments. Either they can be, when there is reciprocal, then you can either charge it to the simultaneous equation, trial and error, or repeated distribution. This one is a step method. So in direct method, what will happen? The expenses of D and E will go to ABC only. In step method, the expenses of E will go to ABCD and the expenses of D will go to ABC. And in reciprocal, D will take the benefit of E, E will take the benefit of D. So this you can solve using either simultaneous equation, trial and error method, or repeated distribution. For example, I'll speak about reciprocal distribution. There are three departments which are production departments and two departments which are service departments. The total expense of service department is 10,000 for X and 6,000 for Y. And X is using the services of Y and Y is also using the services of X. So both are using the services of each other, apart from ABC using the services of Department X as well as Department Y. So if there is first method, simultaneous equation, what will be mentioned to you is that Department X expenses are to be allocated to A, B, C, and Y in the ratio of 20, 30, 40, and 10. Similarly, the expenses of Y will go as 40, 40, 15, and 5. So this means the benefit of X of 10,000, the benefit of X has gone to 20, A, B, C, and Y. And the benefit of Y has gone to A, B, C, and X. So when you will distribute the 10,000 amongst these departments, you will not just distribute it to ABC, but you will also distribute it to department Y. Similarly, when you will distribute the expenses of Y 6,000, you will not just distribute to ABC, you will also distribute this to X. Now the problem is, this means that the total expenses of X is not 10,000. It is something more than 10,000. How much more? A certain portion of Y, 5% of Y will also come to X. So if I say 5% of Y, it makes 300. So this means it becomes 10,300. But Y is also not 6,000. Why is not 6,000? Because some portion of X, 10% of X has to come to Y. So until and unless we know this final figure, what is the total expense of X and what is the total expense of Y, we will not be able to distribute this. The secondary distribution will not be possible. So here we can use a first method, which is simultaneous equation. So how we will solve using simultaneous equation? The total of X is 10,000. Plus it will get 5% of Y. And what is Y? Y is 6,000 plus 10% of X. I can write 10% as 0.10 X. So I have formed two equations. X is what? 10,000 plus 0.05 Y, and Y is 6,000 plus 0.10 X. I'll substitute this value of Y here. So X will become 10,000 plus 0.05 Y. And Y is what? 6,000 plus 0.10 X. So ultimately X becomes 10,000 plus 6,000 into 0.05, 300 plus 0.005 X. This is 1X, this is 0.005 X. So when you will solve this equation, it will become 0.995 X is equal to 10,300. X becomes, you can use your calculators to solve this, 10,300 divided by 0.995, and it is 10,351.78. So I'll round it off to 10,352. So 10,352 is X. And now you can put this value of X here. 10% of 10,362, it will become 1035. So Y becomes 7035. Okay. Now what you will do? You will distribute 10,352 amongst A, B, C. Remember, not in the ratio of 20, 30, 40. You will just distribute 40 plus 30, 70 plus 20, 90% of this. So 10,352 into 20% will go to A. 10,352 into 30% will go to B. And 10,352 into 40% goes to C. Similarly, 7035, 40% goes to A, 40% goes to B, and 7035, 15% goes to C. Remember, do not distribute 10, 3, 5, 2s, 9 in the ratio of 20, 30, 40. 2 is to 3 is to 4. 7035 in the ratio of 40 is to 40 is to 15. Don't do that. In that way, you will be ending up allocating entire cost to these three only. But the entire cost is only 16,000. It is not 17,387. Okay. So 10,000 plus 6,000. Ultimately, 16,000 is to be distributed. So if you look at 10,352, how much is to be distributed amongst ABC? 40 plus 30, 70 plus 20, 90%. So 90% of this becomes 9,316.58. You can distribute this in the ratio of 2 is to 3 is to 4, but not 10, 30, 352 in the ratio of 2 is to 3 is to 4. And similarly, 7035, 95% of that. So if you will add take 7035 and 95% of that, that comes out to be 6683.25. So I can make it 6684. So 6684 plus 9316 will roughly total to 16,000. It's coming out to be 15,999.7.8. 16,000 is to be distributed, remember, not 17,387. So 10,352, when you have arrived at the value of X, the 20% of this will go to A, 30% goes to B, and 40% goes to C. Or you can first calculate 90% of 10,352, that is 9316, that you can distribute amongst ABC in the ratio of 2 is to 3 is to 4. So this is your first method, which is simultaneous equation method. Okay. I'll show the, so in secondary distribution, first thing is direct distribution. If there is a direct distribution, the service departments do not enjoy the benefit of each other. Second is the step method, where one service department may enjoy the benefit of the other, but or not all service departments enjoy the benefit of each other. In reciprocal, each service department will enjoy the benefit of each other. So if there is reciprocal, how you can solve it is, the first method was simultaneous equation, where it will be very clearly mentioned that the service department's expenses are to be borne by production department and other service department in what ratio or what percentage. So we'll formulate two equations. X will be equal to 10,000 plus 5% of Y, and Y will be equal to 6,000 plus 10% of X. And then substitute the value of Y in the first equation, and you will be able to find out the value of X and Y. If we follow the trial and error method, that becomes a little more simple. However, this will not be asked in the examination generally. It's 10,000 plus 6,000. So what we have to do is we have to allocate 10% of X to Y. Okay, 10%. And similarly, Y goes to X, 5%. So you can start with any. You can either start with X or you can start with Y. Just give me a moment. Ten percent of X goes to Y and 5% of Y goes to X. So you can start with any of the two. First, let's say I start with 6%, 5% of 6,000. 300 goes to X. Now X total is 10,300. 10% of this will go to Y. Again, 5% of 1030, that is 52.5, sorry, 51.5 will go to X. 10% of 51.5, 5.15 goes to Y. And 5% of 5.15. Roughly around 0.25, 0.26. This goes to X again. Now, if I want to take 10% of this, it's just 2 paisa, which I can ignore. Takes this total, it comes out to be 10,351.75, which you can again round off to 10,352. Same figure, right? Here, 6,000 plus 1030 plus 5.15, 7035.15, right? So this is also another way in which you can do the distribution. This is called trial and error, but in exam, how did you get the 10% and 5%? This will be given in the question, Amal. That will be given. That's what I said. The question will tell you how much of X goes to A, B, C, and Y, and how much of Y goes to A, B, C, and X. This percentages would be given, and the total expenditure of the service department X and Y would be mentioned. Yes, Pooja? Pooja, you have a question? Please put it in the chat window if you are not able to speak. And the third method that we have here is the repeated distribution method. In repeated distribution method, the same thing follows, but instead of just distributing the 10,000 and 6,000 amongst Y, X to Y and Y to X, and then finding out the total of X and Y and then distributing again amongst ABC, we take ABC simultaneously along with X and Y and keep repeatedly distributing these expenses until and unless it becomes something less than 1 or below that. Then we stop. So what is the difference between trial and error and repeated? In trial and error, you are only taking X and Y at a time so that you ultimately find the total of X and total of Y. And then that total of X is distributed amongst ABC, total of Y is distributed amongst ABC. However, in repeated distribution, the 10,000 will go 300 to X, 10,000 will go 10% to Y, but at the same time, we will also distribute 20% of 10,000, 2,000 to A, 30% of 10,000, 3,000 to B, and 40% of 10,000, 4,000 to C, and another 1,000 to Y. Then another 7,030, 40% will distribute to A, 40% to B, 15% to C, and 5% to X. So we will take A, B, C, X, Y, all the 5 departments together. Okay. Pooja, what is the question? All right. So I hope you've understood. I'll just quickly revise. What are overheads? These are indirect costs. They are not directly traceable to an object. They can be classified on the basis of element, like indirect material, indirect labor, indirect expenses. They can be classified on the basis of nature, fixed, semi-variable, or variable. They can also be classified as controllable, uncontrollable. Yes, the method can be specified in the question, either repeated distribution or simultaneous equation. One of the two may be specified. If it is not specified, then you may follow any of the two, but simultaneous equation would be shorter and better. These overheads will also be abnormal or normal. So how do we treat the overheads? Overheads can be allocated, apportioned, or absorbed. If they are allocated, then you will have know exactly how much is to be charged to which department. If they are to be apportioned, you will have to find a reasonable basis, and on that basis, you will have to distribute the overheads amongst various departments. And absorption we'll talk about a little later. However, in allocation and apportionment, exact expenditure is charged in that year. In absorption, they can be actual, can be less or more than the absorbed figure. So they can be over absorption or under absorption. If actual expenses are less than absorbed, there would be over absorption. And if actual expenses are more than absorbed, that means there is a under absorption. So when the apportionment, after you have allocated or apportioned the overheads, there can also be a primary and secondary distribution. Primary distribution means when the overheads have been apportioned to different departments, which includes the production as well as the service departments. However, service departments are not themselves capable of generating any revenue, so their cost is also to be ultimately borne by the production departments, which are going to sell their products and generate revenue. So the service department cost is to be again distributed amongst the production departments. There can be three methods for this. One is direct method, when the service departments offer their services only to the production departments. There can be step method, where the service department one offers the services only to production department, but the service department two will offer the services to the first service department as well as another three production department. So in direct, what will happen? X expenses will be given to ABC. Y's expenses will also be given to ABC. In what ratio? That percentage may be mentioned. And if it is not mentioned, let's say if it is mentioned that department X is stores department, then you can distribute the total expenses of X amongst ABC in the ratio of raw material consumed. If X is said to be maintenance department, you may distribute it in the ratio of value of machines. If X is HR department, you can distribute in the ratio of number of workers, so on. The second method is step, where the benefit of X is going to A, B, C, Y, but the benefit of Y is going to only A, B, C. So remember here, first you will have to distribute X expenses amongst A, B, C, and Y. So when let's say 10% of 10,000 goes to Y becomes 7,000, and then 7,000 is distributed amongst ABC. If you will first distribute Y amongst ABC and then X, then your job will be double. You will have some part again coming to Y, and then again Y has to be distributed to ABC. So better to first distribute X and then distribute Y. In repeated distribution, what will happen? The benefit of X will go to A, B, C, Y, and the benefit of Y will go to A, B, C, and X. So both are giving benefit to each other. This you can solve either using simultaneous equation, trial and error, or repeated distribution. Right? So I hope this is clear. Let's take a question which is based on absorption and under absorption and over absorption. Before that, let me explain what is absorption now. Absorption means you establish a predetermined rate. Like you've been working for the past 3, 4 years, and you have realized that your extra expenses or indirect expenses are always 20% of raw material consumed. So here you have taken the basis as raw material. So you have to establish a predetermined rate. A predetermined rate can be established on the basis of anything, like it can be a basis of raw material, as we have just taken 20% of raw material. It can be based on wages, let's say 60% of wages. It can be based on prime cost, let's say 10% of prime cost. So where raw material and wages both are important. It could be taken as on the basis of machine hours. Like for every hour the machine works, the cost is 18 rupee per hour. It could be on the basis of labor hours, that every 1 hour the labor works, it is 30 rupee per labor hour. Okay. So this is how you can create the basis. It could be raw material, wages, prime cost, labor hours, machine hours, anything. And then you have to compare what was the actual cost. If the actual cost is less, you will say it's a case of over absorption. But if the actual cost is more, it is a case of under absorption. Now you have to treat this under absorption or over absorption. How you are going to treat this, that also depends on whether your absorption, over absorption or under absorption is because of some normal reasons, or is it something abnormal. On that basis, we'll give this a treatment. So you'll understand this better when you go through this question. Let's look at this. There is a factory and the overheads of a particular department are recovered on the basis of rupee 5 per machine hour. What does this mean? That for every 1 hour when the machine runs, you have to incur 5 rupees as overheads. The total expenses incurred and the actual machine hours for the department for the month of August were 80,000 and 10,000 respectively. What does it mean? Your actual expense is 80,000. Actual total expenses are 80,000. The machine has run for how many hours? Just 10,000 hours. So look at your predetermined rate. What it is? It is 5 rupee per hour. So if the machine is running for 5 rupee per hour and 10,000 hours the machine is running, then the overhead absorbed would be 10,000 into 5, 50,000. Actual expenses, rupees 80,000. Machine has run for how many hours? 10,000 hours. Predetermined rate was 5 rupee per machine hour. So the absorbed overheads would be 10,000 into 5, 50,000 rupees. So this becomes a case of under absorption, right? This becomes a case of under absorption. By how much? By rupees 30,000. 80,000 is the actual expenditure and 50,000 is the absorbed. So 80,000 minus 50,000, you get 30,000 as under absorbed expenses. How are we going to treat them? Let's say this is specifically out of the 80,000, 15,000 became payable due to an award of the labor code, and 5,000 was in respect of expenses of the previous year booked in the current month. So this 15,000 and 5,000 do not pertain to this year's wrong absorption, right? 15,000 is an abnormal thing. Labor court is where a dispute is raised with the labor, and the labor court has awarded the decision in favor of the workers, and 15,000 has to be paid because of that. Now, every year there cannot be a labor dispute. So this is something abnormal. So out of this 30,000, 15,000 is purely abnormal due to labor code. 15,000 became payable due to an award of the labor code, and 5,000 in respect of expenses of the previous year. So this 5,000 is also not pertaining to the current year. So this should also be deducted. This is also not to be treated here, right? So how much is the actual under absorption then this year? It's only 10,000. Now, actual production was 40,000, out of which 30,000 units are sold. And on analyzing, it was found that 60% of the under absorbed overheads was also due to defective planning, and rest was normal. So see, out of 30,000, 15,000 because of labor code, 5,000 previous year, and out of this 10,000 which remains, 60% is again abnormal. Why? Because defective planning was there. So defective planning is also not something you do each year. So 6,000 is again abnormal and 4,000 becomes normal. How would you treat the under-absorbed overheads in the cost accounts? So let us first look at this. Actual overheads incurred, 80,000. Overheads absorbed, 10,000 into 5, under-absorbed, 30,000. Abnormal, 15,000 due to labor code, plus 5,000 previous year, plus another 60% of remaining 10,000 due to defective planning. So 15 plus 5, 20 plus 6, 26,000. 4,000 normal under absorbed over. Treatment, the abnormal overheads should be charged to costing P&L account. So your journal entry would be costing P&L account, debit to under absorbed overheads. If you have created the under absorbed overheads account, or simply two overheads if you have not created the overhead suspense or under absorbed overheads account. Out of the remaining 4,000, how will you treat it? So look at further information we have. The total units manufactured were 40,000, out of which 30,000 are sold and 10,000 are finished goods or closing stock. So this 4,000 should also be allocated amongst these units in the ratio of 3:1. So 3,000 of the underabsorbed are for the units which are sold, which will increase the cost of goods sold, and 1,000 of it will go to finished goods, which will increase the cost of finished goods. So your journal entry would be cost of goods sold account debit for 3,000, finished goods stock 1,000, and once again to overheads account in bracket under absorb. So whatever the name you have given to the account, give that name only here, 4,000. So this is how you're going to treat the overheads under absorbed overheads account, right? In this question, there is one more aspect I'll discuss here. It has said 40,000 units are there, which are 30,000 sold. If it has said 30,000 finished goods and 10,000 WIP, 50% complete. And out of the finished goods, 25,000 sold and 5,000 finished goods closing stock. So this 30,000, 10,000 WIP will be work in progress closing stock. Now 10,000 WIP, 50% complete is equivalent to 5,000 units. So first we will divide 40,000, 4,000 under absorbed normal expenses between these 35,000 units. This will give us the rate, and whatever it comes out to be, that multiplied by 25,000 will go to cost of goods sold. That multiplied by 5,000 will go to finished goods stock, and that multiplied by 5,000 will go to work in progress stock. Okay. Let's look at a full length question on repeated distribution or reciprocal method. PH Limited is a manufacturing company. It has three production departments, ABC. ABC are production departments, and two service departments, X and Y. This is the budget for the month of December. Direct material, direct wages, factory rent, power, depreciation, other overheads, so far. So factory rent is 4,000, power is 2,500, depreciation is 1,000, other overheads is 9,000. Here there is one very important concept. Remember this, that direct material cost and direct wages are not overheads. But only for the production department. Direct material and direct wages, they are not overheads, but only in the production department. In service departments, material consumed or wages incurred is again indirect. So they are overheads. What I'm trying to say is this is not an overhead. 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 This is again not an overhead. And this is not an overhead. So these three are six items are not overheads. Direct material and direct wages for production department is not overheads, but for service department, they are. Other expenses are not allocated. We will have to apportion them. For example, factory rent 4,000. How do I distribute amongst ABC, XY? What do you think should be the basis for distribution of factory rent? The basis should be, let's look at additional information that will tell us what is the best basis for this. You have area, you have capital value, you have machine hours, and you have horsepower of the machines. So as per this additional information, factory rent best suits is area. So on the basis of area, the factory rent of 4,000 should be distributed amongst A, B, C, and XY. What is the ratio? It's 500, 250, 500, 250, 500. So the ratio, so basis is area, and the ratio is 2 is to 1 is to 2 is to 1 is to 2. So in this ratio, you will distribute the 4,000. This totals to 8. 4,000 divided by 8, 500. 500 into 2, 500 into 1, 500 into 2, 500 into 1, and 500 into 2. So I've distributed the 4,000 amongst ABC, 1,000, 500, 1,000, 500, 1,000. Next is power. Power should have horsepower of the machine. Okay. Power should best be related to horsepower of the machine. What is the ratio of the horsepower of the machine? It's 50, 40, 20, 15, 25. So ratio becomes 10 is to 8 is to 4 is to 3 is to 5. When I take the total of this, it becomes 18, 22, 25, and 5, 30. Okay. 10, 8, 4, 3, and 5. And 2,500 divided by 30 will give you some fraction here. 83.33. So this will be 833. 667. 333. 250. And 416.67. So I'll make it 470. Next is depreciation. What do you think should be the best basis for depreciation? Capital value of assets. What is the ratio? It's 2 is to 4 is to 2 is to 1 is to 1. Capital value of assets 20, 40, 20, 10, 10 lakhs. Total 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000. So 200, 400, 200, 100, and 100. And the last is other overheads. Now, if I see the additional information, I have utilized this, I have utilized this, I have utilized this. On that logic also, I can take it on the basis of machine hours. And we have seen in the previous explanation also that overheads can be charged on the basis of wages, material, prime cost, labor hours, or machine. Should we show the working below? We can directly allocate in the column. So you'll have to show this you can directly allocate. You can you can create, uh, you'll create a table. What is the cost? So you have, let's say, factory rent. This is how you will show. Then you will show the basis. You will calculate the ratio and your departments A, B, C, X, and Y. I'm doing it in the question here itself because what will happen if I uh, move to the next page? It will waste time in the sense I'll have to look for the figures again and again. So other overheads, the best basis is machine hours. Basis machine hours, what's the ratio? 1:2 is to 4 is to 1 is to 1. This totals 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is also 9,000. 9,000 divided by 9 will give you 1,000. So exactly the same figures. 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 1,000, and 1,000. So this completes our primary distribution, right? But we'll also have to distribute the total of X and Y again back to ABC. Now, a technical assessment of the apportionment of expenses of service department is as under. The benefit of X goes to 45% A, 15% B, 30% to C, and 10% to Y. You will always do a quick check that totals to 100. The benefit of service department Y, 60% goes to A, 35% goes to B, nothing goes to C, or 5% goes to C. All right. So let's say what are the totals of X and Y first. 2,000 plus 1,000, 3,000, 3,500, 3,750, 3,850, and 5,850. Verify your answers always simultaneously, okay? Similarly, Y, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 507. There isn't much of a difference between the total of Y and X. Now, like I said, show the distribution of overheads to various departments. Done, first part. Statement showing redistribution of service department expenses to production departments. No method is prescribed. I prefer simultaneous equation. So X is equal to what? 5,850 plus from Y, what is coming to X? 5%. 5% can be written as 0.05 Y. What is Y? 5,517 plus how much of X? Service department X, 10% of X. Substituting this value of Y here, X is equal to 5,850 plus 0.05 multiplied by 5,517 plus 0.10 X. So now you have one equation and one variable. 5850 plus 275.85, 5517 into 0.05 plus 0.005 x. 0.995x is equal to 5850 plus 275.85, 6125.85. Therefore, x is equal to 6125.85 divided by 0.995. It is 6156.63. I'll call it 6157. And 10% of 6157 is 615. So 5515 plus 615.66. The value of y is 6132. Again, this can be taken as 6133 rounded off. So now what you will do? 6157, 45% goes to A, 6157 into 0.15 goes to B, 6157 into 0.30 goes to C, and 6133 into 0.6 goes to A, 6133.35 goes to B. These figures will also come here, and in C, the department Y does not contribute anything. This way you will have the total of A, B, and C. So let us do it here. The total of A so far is how much? 3033 so far. The total of B is 2400 plus 500, 2900, 3567. And the total of C is 4533. The total of X comes out to be 6157. I'm just writing it here. It's not actually 6157, okay? And 6133. So when this will be distributed, in the ratio of 30%, 15%, and 45%. Sorry, 45, 15, and 30. And Y goes A and B, 60 and 35. So 6157 into 0.45, that's 2770.65. I use a trick here generally in the exams. Instead of calculating the 15%, I can see this is 1/3. So I divide the figure by 3. And now 15 and 30 is double. Now I'll multiply it by 2. 1847.1. Similarly, 6133 into 60%, is 3679.8. I'll take it 3680 and 6133 into 0.35. 2146.55 goes here. And nothing here. When you will add these three, it should total to these three plus these two. It will add total to only these two figures. So always verify your answer. 11,367. So add all these five figures. This should be 11,000, that much. Now you have the total of A, B, and C. Why it was important to calculate so far? Because there is one more part being asked in this question. It's asked, what is the machine hour rate for the production department of ABC? How many machine hours? 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000. So finally, we'll divide it by machine hours. 1,000, 4,000, and 2,000. And you'll get the machine hour rate for departments A, B, and C. I'll solve it for one. Department A is 3030 plus 2770.65 plus 3680. You can round it off. This 65 into 71. It's 9484. And when 9484 is divided by 1,000, it comes out to be at the rate of 9.484. So the machine hour rate for department A is 9.484. So anytime a machine runs for 1 hour in department A, you incur an expenditure of 9.484 rupees. Okay? Clear, everyone? Next, we have another type of question here. A machine shop has 8 identical drilling machines. Here we will be finding out the machine hour rate for the machine, a basis of absorption. A machine shop has 8 identical drilling machines which are manned by 6 operators. The machines cannot be worked without an operator wholly engaged on it. It itself implies that at a time only 6 machines would be running. The original cost of all of these 8 machines works out to be 8 lakhs, and the 6-month period particulars are furnished to you. Always remember that if the data is given for 6 months, the entire data is to be calculated for 6 months only. If it is given per month, then it is to be given for month only. So normal available hours per month are 208. Absenteeism without pay for hours 18. That means payment will go for these 18 hours. It will not go for these 18 hours. However, leave with pay is 20 hours. And normal idle time, which is unavoidable, is 10. Indirectly, we are saying that out of 208, so the payment will go for 190 hours for the operators. Leave with pay, definitely payment will be paid. Normal idle time, unavoidable hours, obvious unavoidable hours. So this will also be paid and it's normal. For example, a worker is coming in the factory. So he is working for 8 hours. He is supposed to enter at 9 and leave at 5. But when he enters the factory gate at 9 o'clock, there is a distance he might have to walk till he reaches the place where he has to start working. So maybe another 5 minutes is gone. So here he is not productive and it is unavoidable. So this is normal idle time, which is unavoidable. You cannot deduct the payment of the worker saying that for the 5 minutes he was walking to his workplace. So you'll have to make the payment. Then average rate of wages per day of 8 hours is rupee 20. So this will give us how much is the hourly rate. Hourly rate would be 20 divided by 8, 2.5 rupee per hour. So the workers are supposed to be paid 2.5 rupee per hour. And they will is 24,000 for the year. Okay. And 24,000 divided by 2. So repairs and maintenance will be equal to 12,000. Insurance 40,000 divided by 2, 20,000. Depreciation 10% on original cost. So 80,000 for the year divided by 2, 40,000 for the 6 months period. Other sundry work expenses 12,000 divided by 2, 6,000. General management expenses which are allocated to this particular machine shop 530 divided by 2. So these are some of the other expenses. You're required to work out a comprehensive machine hour rate. When the word comprehensive is used, you include wages also apart from overheads. So comprehensive machine hour, whenever a worker is running the machine, how much is the total cost? The wages paid to the worker plus the overheads cost. So let's solve this. First, let's calculate the wages for the workers. Wages will be paid to the workers for 190 hours in a month, and there are 6 months, and there are 6 operators, and they are paid at the rate of 2.5 rupee per hour. So the total wages are 17,100. And we also have to pay bonus, which is 15% of the wages. Bonus to the workers would be 2,565. So these are the basic wages and all. Apart from this, there will be other overheads. However, when we are calculating the machine hour rate, we'll have to prepare a working note. This will also go as a working note, total wages of the worker. And how many machine hours? So when we're calculating the machine hours, we have 160 productive hours per month for 6 months for 6 operators. So when we'll divide the total cost, we'll divide it by machine hours, which is 5,760 machine hours in 6 months period. Okay. Now, after this, it is simple. You will write down all the costs. So first, wages, 17,100. Bonus, 2,565. Forward, 8,050. Supervision and indirect labor, 3,300. And electricity was 1,200. Then repairs, 12,000. Insurance, 20,000. Depreciation, 40,000. And general and management expenses allocated, sorry, other sundry expenses, 6,000 and 27,265. Other sundry expenses, 6,000. Okay. So this will be your statement showing machine hour rate based on 6 months period. You'll take the total of these expense and divide by machine hours run in this period, 5760. That will give you the comprehensive machine hour rate, right? We can calculate quickly. So it's 17,100 plus 2,565 plus 8,050 plus 3,300 plus 1,200 plus 12,000 plus 20,000 plus 40,000 plus 6,000 and plus 27,265. So it comes out to be 1,37,480. When this is divided by 5,760, the comprehensive machine hour rate comes out to be at the rate of 23.8 rupee per hour. So every time, including, please Shall we move on to the next topic then? Activity-based costing. All right. So let's start with activity-based costing. So far, we have learned about overheads, and whatever the method we have learned on absorption is a traditional method. Under traditional method, we took the entire overheads on the basis of, let's say, machine hour. But not all the expenses, they are of different nature. Not all of them would be dependent upon machine hours. Similarly, if you take another base as labor hours, not all the expenses in the overheads will be related to labor hours. So we came across another concept which is called ABC, or activity-based costing. This is a more scientific and more technical method and more appropriate way of allocating and absorbing the overhead. Under ABC costing, what happens is the first thing is we find out what is the cost. So you find out that what is the cost that you have incurred on a particular activity. And then you find out what is the cost driver for that activity. That means what is instigating that cost to be incurred. So once you find out that this is the cost driver, then you figure out how many times was the cost driver used, how much was the frequency, or what is the number of times the cost driver was used in that period when this cost was incurred. And you divide the total cost of the activity by the frequency of the cost driver used. So you establish a rate, not just overall rate for the overheads, but you establish a rate for that particular activity. And then you check how many times was that activity used, done in different departments. For example, you are supposed to allocate between ABC. You will find out that how many times this activity, the cost driver was used or the activity was done in these three departments. And then apply this rate to find out the overheads actually incurred by department A, B, or C. For example, if I take the example of machine setup. Now, whenever you are doing a production run, you set up the machine. So this is the activity, and the total cost in setting up the machine comes out to be, let's say, 20,000 in a month. Now, in this month, the machine was set up 200 times. So if the machine is set up 200 times in this month, and the total cost, so the cost driver is how many times you are setting up the machine. Total cost was 20,000. Machine was set up 200 times. So if you establish the rate, it comes out to be 100 rupee every time the machine is set up. 20,000 divided by 200. Now we will see that in this month, how many times the machine was set up in department A, in department B, and in department C. So instead of looking at the machine hours of department ABC, we see how many times the machine was set up. So in this way, this 20,000 should be allocated as 4,000, 6,000, and 10,000. So it is a more scientific way of distributing the overheads amongst the various departments. And activity-based costing will give you more realistic and more appropriate and reasonable results as compared to the traditional method of following the overheads absorption. Now let's understand this further using this question. ABC Limited has a production department and it has two products, P1 and P2. So we are here going to allocate our overheads amongst two products, P1 and P2. The total overhead cost of this department comes out to be 15,500. And traditionally, it has been allocated on the basis of direct labor hours. Other information is given below. So far what has happened is P1 and P2 are the two products manufactured in one department. And in this particular period, the total expenditure was 15,500, which was traditionally allocated on the basis of direct labor hours. Other information is product P1 and P2. How many quantity? 100 and 1000 units. How much labor hour does it require per unit? 1 hour. So how many labor hours would have been incurred for P1? 100 units into 100 hours, mentioned already. 1000 units into 3000 hours. So a total of 3100 hours have been incurred in manufacturing P1 and P2. Now 3100 hours and 15,500 rupees, if you take the direct labor hour basis, the absorption rate comes out to be 15,500 divided by 3100. 5 rupee per labor hour. Okay. Now, if on this basis you divide the 15,500 among P1 and P2, P1 will get how much? 100 into 5, 500. And the cost of P2 would be 15,000. Overheads absorbed on the basis of traditional method, on the basis of labor hours. So only 500 is the expenditure incurred for P1 and 15,000 is the expenditure incurred for P2. Now let's see, using EBC costing, how we can go to a more realistic results. So first we identify what are the various activities which are incurred in this department. What is the cost driver for that particular activity? And how many times the cost driver was used for product P1 and how many times it was used for product P2. So the various activities are material handling, setup cost, some other variable cost, and QC or quality control activity. Out of the 15,500, 4,200 was incurred on material handling, 4,900 on setup, 3,100 on other variable costs, and 3,300 on quality control. How many times this? What is the cost driver for material handling? The cost driver for material handling depends on number of parts. So whatever the material handling cost is, his cost driver is number of parts, and setup cost, number of production run. Other variable cost, this you can take on labor hours. Quality control, how many times the number inspection was done for P1 or P2. So it depends upon number of inspections. So we will have to see how many number of parts was totally used in this particular period. Here is another information. P1, P2, two products, units 100 and 1000. Number of production runs, 2 and 5. So number of production runs are 7. Number of parts per unit. This is the total number of production run, but the number of parts are per unit. So it's 4 into 100, 400 for P1 and 8 into 1000, 8,000 for P2. So number of parts are 100 into 4 plus 1000 into 8. 8,400 parts. Labor hours already mentioned, 15,500. Sorry, 3,100. 15,500 is the total cost. Number of inspection. This is also exactly not per unit, but in total, 4 times inspection was done for P1 and 7 times inspection was done for P2. So total number of inspection are 11, total number of production run are 7, total labor hours are 3100, and production parts, number of parts were 400 plus 8000, 8400. So we have done the basic working. Let's see how you calculate the cost per unit under the traditional costing system and under the ABC system. First, we have already done it under traditional system, but let's see how we present it. Fifteen 500 divided by 3100, that is equal to 5 rupee per hour. So the total cost allocated to P1 is 5 into 100, 500 rupees, and 5 into 3000, 15,000. Cost per unit, if you will calculate, it will come out to be 500 divided by 100 units, 5, and 15,000 divided by 1000, 15 rupee per unit. So the cost allocated for product P1 is 500, it's 5 rupee per unit, and the cost allocated to product P2 is 15,000, it is 15 rupee per unit. Under ABC, first we will write down, we'll prepare a chart of statement showing cost per unit for each cost driver. Activity, cost driver, frequency of cost driver, and cost per unit. Material handling, setup, other variable, and quality control. Number of parts, I need one more column. Total costs, frequency of cost driver. So material handling is the activity, cost driver is number of parts. The total cost was 4,200. 8,400 parts were used. 400 plus 8,000, So the driver cost per unit comes out to be 50 paisa per unit. Setup cost, production run. The total setup costs are 4,900. Production run are 7 times. 700 per production run. Other variable costs are 3,100. Cost driver is labor hours. Labor hours is also used 3,100 labor hours. So the cost per labor hour comes out to be for other variable cost 1 rupee per labor hour. Quality control. Cost driver is number of inspections. Total cost is 3,300. Inspection has been done on product P1 and P2 11 times. So this comes out to be 3,300 divided by 11, 300 rupee per inspection. This total should be 15,500. Verify this again and again that your calculations are correct. Right. Now, statement of cost of products P1 and P2 based on activity-based costing. ABC analysis in material is about classifying the raw material into category A, B, and C, where category A is the most in value, least in units. A scientific way of allocating the overheads amongst various products. So product is P1 and P2. The first cost is material handling cost. The rate for material handling cost was 0.50. And how many times material was handled? Number of parts used in P1 and P2? 400 and 8,000. So you will multiply here in bracket 400 into 0.5. Material handling basis was number of parts. 400 parts was used for product P1 and 8,000 parts were used for product P2. So this is how total of 4,200 is divided amongst P1 and P2. The next was the setup cost based on production run, and the cost of setup was at the rate of 700 per production run. Production run was done 2 times for P1 and 5 times for P2. So 2 into 700 and 5 into 700. So 4,900 of setup cost is distributed amongst P1 and P2 in the ratio of 1,400 and 3,500. Remember, under traditional, the total cost of P1 was only 500. But here, just one part of the total cost, setup cost, that is alone crossing the total cost under traditional. Third expenditure is your other variable expenses based on labor hours. Other variable costs 3,100 based on labor hours, which are again 3,100, 100 for P1 and 3,000 for P2. Other variable costs at the rate of 1 rupee per labor hour, hundred into 1 and 3,000 into 1. So 3,100 is the other variable cost. Quality control based on inspection at the rate of 300 rupee per inspection, right? We'll pick it up from the first table. These rates will be applicable when you're allocating. Okay, 300 per inspection. Now, how many times inspection was done for P1 and P2? 4 and 7. 4 into 300 and 7 into 300. 4 into 300, 1,200 and 7 into 300, 2,100. So the total cost is 3,300. Now, if you add up these costs, 200 plus 1,400, 1,600 plus 100, 1,700 and plus 1,200, 2,900. So the total cost of P1 is 2,900, not just 500, it is 2,900. Whereas the cost of P2 is, this you will continue here as a total. Okay. I'm just running short of space, so I've written here the total. 4,000 plus 3,500, 7,500 plus 3,000, 10,500 plus 2,100, 12,600. Do the total, it should come out to be 15,500. That's very important. So keep on doing or verifying your totals. So best is to always create a column for the total, right? Now here, if you find out the rate per unit, it is 29 rupee for P1, not just 5. And how many units of P2? 1,000 units. So 2,900 divided by 100 is 29 and 12,600 divided by 1,000 is 12.60 per unit, which came out to what under traditional 5 and 15. See the vast difference? Product P1 appeared to be less costly and P2 be more costly. Now, what mistake could you do in the traditional? By looking at 5 and 15, you could have fixed the price of P2 much higher and the price of P1 lower, like 6 or 7, just to have a reasonable profit. Whereas the cost incurred for P1 is 29 rupee per unit. So P1 should be readily sellable in the market for 30, 35, right? Whereas under traditional method, you were getting very wrong calculation for the overheads which are incurred in P1 and P2. 29, 30, 30 price and all this I'm saying looking just as the overheads. There would be also material and labor costs. So you have to consider that also, right? So I hope you've understood how we calculate the overheads cost under the ABC method, right? First, find out what is the activity, then find out what is the cost driver of that activity. Then find out what is the total cost incurred on that activity during that period and how many times the cost driver was used in that period. Let us do one more question so that if there is a different format or a different calculation, you will be able to manage it. Stud Limited produces 4 products, A, B, C, D, for which the relevant cost information is given below. Direct materials 40, 50, 30, 60. Direct labor 28, 21, 14 and 21. This is in rupees. How many machine hours were used for every unit per unit? 4, 3, 2, 3. And what is the output per annum? 120, 180, and 120. The products are generally produced in batches of 20 units. Okay. For all the four, when you produce them in batches, and each batch size is of 20 units. So this will tell me how many batches were run for product A, B, C, and D. 20 batch size being 20 units per batch. Six batches would have run for A, 120 divided by 20, 5 for B, 4 for C, and again 6 for D. So these are the batches you will run. 6, 5, 4, and 6. And the total machine hours used would be 120 into 4, 480, 100 into 3, 300 times machine hours would be running, 300 hours for B, 160 hours for C, and 360 hours for D. So this is how many machine hours is run for product A, B, C, and D. So with this given information, we have found out two things: how many batches for each product and how many machine hours for each product. Orders are executed in multiples of 10 only. So you will see how many orders executed. I'll write here orders executed for all the four products. I'm writing here not for the examination purpose, where you will have a separate table showing all these calculations or working note, but just because if I move to the next sheet, I'll have to again look for the figures from it's given for the 5 activities: machining, setup, storing, inspection, material handling. Their total costs are given and their cost drivers are given. So machine hours, how many machine hours have been used? 480 plus 300, 780, 780 plus 160, 940 plus 360. So 1300 machine hours have been used. Number of runs for setup, batch setup: 6 plus 5, 11 plus 4, 15 plus 6, 21. So even if it had not been mentioned here, you could have done the total, just like you have done for the machine hours. Storing depends upon number of requisitions. Number of requisitions are 20 for each product. So this is simply given. Uniform across all four products, 20 for each product, total 80. So this we know that it will be divided equally. This cost will be divided equally amongst the four products. Inspection is based on number of runs, 21 runs. Look at it. How many runs are there? Back on the basis of batches. So there again 21. And material handling will be on the basis of orders executed. So they are 12 plus 10, 22 plus 8, 30 plus 12, 40. So 21 run, 42 orders executed, and 1300 hours the machine has run. You require to calculate the cost per unit for each of the product under traditional costing system as well as ABC, and also comment upon the difference in cost under the two systems. Product overhead as per traditional costing system are absorbed on the basis of machine hours. If nothing is mentioned, you could have taken labor hours, material, on the basis of material cost, on the basis of direct labor hours or machine hours. And okay, Team, I'm giving you 5 minutes. Do the working and then I'll explain. Okay, all of you just try to work it out 5 minutes on your own and then I will explain. Have you done some working? Okay, let's look at it how it's going to be presented. The activities are machine setup, storing, inspection, and material handling. Inspection and material handling. These are the five activities. What are their cost drivers? So machinery cost driver is machine hour, run, requisition, run, orders executed. Machine hours, run, requisitions, inspection is also on run, and orders executed. So this is the activity. This is the cost driver. Then you have the total cost. 10,430, 520, 5250, 3600, 2100, 4620. Frequency of machine hours, runs were 21, orders executed were double the run, requisitions have been mentioned 20 for each, in totality 80. And then you will write the products here only, let's say ABCD. So the cost per machine hour is 10,430 divided by 1300. It's 8.023, coming out to be in fraction 10,430 divided by 1300. Let me check this 1300 first. 480 plus 300. Fraction doesn't always mean something is wrong, but you must verify it also. Yeah, it's 1300, and 10,430 divided by 1300 is 8.023. So when you will multiply with 480 for product A, it will come out to be 3851. Machine at the rate of 8 point something, right? 8.023. In bracket, you will show this calculation in a slightly smaller font for your examination purposes. 300, 160, 360. One 60 and 360. Triple eight. Also have a column of total so that Any discrepancies being caught here? It's 1283.70. I'll keep it at 4. Then setup at the rate of 5250 divided by 21. It's at the rate of 250 per run. How many times the setup is done? For ABCD batches 6546. 250 into 6, 5, 4, 6. Similarly, storing based on requisition 20 each. So this will be divided equally, 900 each. However, you can establish the rate here, 3600 divided by 80. It's 45. And in all the calculations, you can write 20 into 45. Okay. Then you have inspection, again run, but the rate is here 100 rupee instead of 250. So 100 into 6, 100 into 5, 100 into 4, and 100 into 6, 2100. And finally, material handling, 4620 divided by 42. So it's 110. And 42 would be like batch order executed 12, 10, 8, 12. So 12 into 110, 1320. 8 would be 880. 10, sorry. 880 would be here. 1110 would be here. And 1320 would be here. So these are the way in which under ABC, the factory, all the overheads would be allocated. However, had you done it under traditional method, it would have been the total divided by 10,430, and that would have given you for P1, P2, and P3, and sorry, A, B, C, D. Okay. So we have to find out under the traditional costing system, and we have to use machine hours. So machine hours were 1300. Now total cost is 26,000. So when 26,000 will be divided by 1300, the absorption rate comes out to be 2 rupee, 26,000, 20 rupee per hour, 20 rupee per machine hour. So for A, it would be 480 into 20, 9,600. For B, it would be 300 into 20, 6,000. For C, it would be 160 into 20, 3,200. And for D, it would be 360 into 20, 7,200. A total of 26,000. However, under absorption ABC, we have come across the answer as 3,851 plus 1,500 plus 900 plus 600 and plus 1,320 for A. It's 8,171. Under traditional, under ABC. Similarly, you will calculate for all the four and find out how much difference does it create to do the calculation as per traditional method or to allocate the overheads as per the ABC method. And you'll say that ABC is more scientific and more logical, right? So I hope the concept of ABC costing is clear. It is not very necessary that you will get a very direct question that this is the activity, this is the overhead, this is the cost driver, these are the units used in products ABC. So you may require to multiply or divide something like uh, the machine hours is how many? 4 per unit. So you have to multiply the output with the machine hour. The run is 20 units per batch. So one number of units divided by 20 for all the products. Order executed is in 10 units. So 120 divided by 10, that will give you the number of orders executed. Okay. So this is about ABC, right? Let's do a case scenario here, a simple case study. The sales department of A Limited is analyzing the customer's profitability for its product Z, and it has decided to analyze the profitability of 5 new customers. Now, we are making a product Z, but we are going to do the activity-based costing on 5 customers. So they are our unit this time. All buy product Z at 5,400 per unit, and they sell it to the retail customers at a retailed listed price of 6,480 per unit. So the data pertaining to the 5 customers is given. Sales department is there for A Limited, and you are seeing that which customer is offering you the highest profitability for product Z. Profitability is analyzed for 5 new customers. Company buys product Z at 5,400 and sell to the retail customers at a listed price of 6,480. So as such, the earning is 1,080 per unit. And we have to calculate who is giving us highest profit. The data pertaining to the 5 customers is given below. So you will have A, B, C, D, and E. 1,080 is the or you can say 4,500 into 6,480 would be the revenue. Or you can directly take the profit. If you take the revenue, you'll have to subtract the cost of 5,400. Profit will be calculated by number of units multiplied by profit per unit. 4,500, 6,000 into 1,080, 9,500 into 1,080, 7,500 into 1,080, and finally 12,750 into 1,080. Listed selling price is given. Actual selling price is different. Okay. As the actual selling price is different, your profitability will be different for all the 4 customers. So it's not 1,080 for B, it's 6,372 minus 5,400. That's 972. For C, 5,400 minus 5,940, it's 540 only. And you can see they're buying in bulk more, so the profitability is less. Here, 5,400 minus 6,264, so it's 864. And 5,400 minus 5,832, it's 432. So first, this is the profitability from units multiplied by actual selling price minus cost. Then you have number of purchase orders, 15, 25, 30, 25, 30. Number of customer visits you have to pay, 2, 3, 6, 2, 3. Number of deliveries, 10, 30, 60, 40, 20. Kilometers traveled per delivery. So when the kilometers are traveled per delivery, you have to multiply the total kilometers traveled, 20 into 10, 200, 30 into 6, 180, 60 into 5, 300, 40 into 10, 400. These are the total kilometers traveled. 20 into 30, 600. And after a detailed analysis and computation, the following activities have been identified and cost has been calculated. Order taking cost, 4,500 per purchase order. How many purchase orders are there? Total. 15 plus 25, 40. 40 plus 30, 70, 95, and 125 orders. So the cost per purchase order would be 4,500 divided by 125. This becomes your table for calculating the cost per activity. So cost driver is this, frequency is this, and total costs are also given. So cost per unit becomes 36. Now you know how to apply this to A, B, C, D, E. 36 into 15 will go for 36 into 15 will go for A. Into 25 will go for B. One zero eight zero for C. 900 again for D and 1080 for E. Right? So this is how you do the calculation. Let's look at questions and basis that will give the answers. How much cost on customer visit is incurred on customer E? How much cost on customer visit is incurred on customer E? Let's look at customer E. Customer visits paid to him are 3. Customer visit is 3,600 per customer visit. So our answer would be 3,600 into 3, right? So 10800. Next question. What is the cost of goods sold for customer D? Cost of goods sold for customer D. Cost of goods sold is uniform. It is 5,400 per unit. So let's see how many units are sold to D. 7,500. 7,500 into 5,400 should be the answer. 4050000. So when you have a case scenario like this, also look at what are the questions. Maybe you don't need to solve the entire thing, specifically parts of the question. How much is the cost of expediting delivery for customer A? Okay. Customer A expediting delivery for customer A. Expediting delivery is 13,500 per expedited delivery. 13,500 per expedited delivery. And number of expedited deliveries are given. It's 0 for customer A, B, C, D, only 1 for E. So number of expedited delivery for customer A is 0. Next, compute the customer level operating income of customer A. So here you will do the complete question for A only. Like we have done the customer visits. Order taking is 4,500 per order. How many orders are taken? 4,500 per, okay, 45. Fine, fine. It's given 4,500 per purchase order, 3,600 per customer visit, 7.50 per delivery kilometer travel, 22 per case sold. So we don't need to calculate the frequency or the cost. The cost driver rate is given, not the cost driver or the total cost. Okay. So order taking is 4,500 per purchase order. Let's do for customer A. First, we have found out what is the profit, 4,500 into 1080. That's the profit for A, 4 lakh, 48 lakh, 60,000. Okay. Now the first cost is order taking, 4,500 per purchase, 15 into 45, 67,500. The second cost is customer visits, 3,600 per customer visit. Customer visits are to 7,200. Deliveries, 7.50 per delivery kilometer traveled. 200 into 7.5, 15,000. 1,500. 22 per case sold. Units sold. Um, Number of customer deliveries, kilometer expedited deliveries. So product handling is 22.50 per case sold. 4,500 cases are sold. 4,500 into 22.5. So this is 101250. So any other thing? Number of deliveries are 10. Purchase orders 15 into 4,500. Order taking is 4,500. Customer visit deliveries are 7.5. Product handling, expedited delivery 0. Right. So number of deliveries is used to multiply these two, and then 7.5. This is used, this is used. So this is the total cost of customer A. 67,500 plus 7,200 plus 1,500 and plus 101,250. So this is how you will calculate for each and every theoretical question. Operating income will be calculated after subtracting from this or when you say operating income here, 4 lakh, 48 lakh, 60,000. So it's 4 lakh 60, 46 lakh 82,000. Okay. So this is the operating level income for customer. So we don't need to calculate for all. We'll calculate only for those for which we have been asked. Okay. Similarly, you can calculate for D and E. Find out what is the income and other expenses which are any doubt. Any comment? I hope this is Yeah.